shuts down the compromise. So a compromise to not compromise. So it's the fact that in Naruto, there is a sheep problem. Unlike Attack on Titan Season 1, which we just watched.
Okay, you want to segue to that? Okay.
So, be honest with me. In
Where did I write?
In the Naruto universe, from Kishimoto's limitations of writing in the war arc, he's running on fumes, he's rushing it, whatever. Do the individuals, have they stopped to think about the Infinite Tsukiyomi and why they individually don't want it? Or are they only doing it because this is called the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, of which Gaara and the division leaders told them to do it because he's the bad guy?
I think they might know, like, that Madara's Obito is trying to do the Infinite Tsukiyomi, but ignoring that, the main point is, I think they're not actually thinking, would I want that? I think they're just thinking, bad guy's trying to force me into a genjutsu? Hell nah. I ain't doing that. Let's go fight him. Like, that's just, they're not thinking now.
Yeah.
Because, again, this does tie into the blind sheep problem, because I can address this from many perspectives. It's not just the war arc or whatever. No, it's literally in basically, so obviously, there will be some, I'm going to over extremify it. There will be times where there's 2 people, or maybe 3 out of 100. The point is, it's basically all against 1 at all times.
Mm-hmm.
The whole village hates Naruto. Oh, sorry, except Iruka, the one exception. The entire Uchiha is just on board, except for, oh no, Itachi and Shizui, the only 2 exceptions. And you can just do this down the line with, like, basically everything. It's always just like all but 1 or 1 plus another exception. It's always like that in every single situation. I did write a little example rewrite. If you go to the tab and
really quick,
on spoiler
before the example rewrite, I want to add on to that and to say the reason that they have the 1 or 2 exceptions is because 1, the plot demands it, and 2, because it's demanded of this character. Not even necessarily that it would work best for this character, but that it needs to work for this character. Where is Rita? So this is unlike, for example, first of all, unlike Attack on Titan, which isn't just about the main characters making decisions with the blind sheep following. This is the nameless people either agreeing or not agreeing, and like half of them just walk away in season 1, as we saw a couple episodes ago in Trough.
Yeah, so we'll look into that after.
But another example.
Start with an example.
Another one, just to add on this real quick, would be in Death Note. Again, spoilers for Death Note. We have, I think it's Matsuda. It might not be Matsuda. It's someone. One of the named people.
It's gonna be my Death Note example.
Okay. I'll let you do it. So where is it?
Okay, yeah. So let me start with so go to the podcast topics. I have it in there.
Okay.
I'm gonna start by just actually. Would it be better to do the Naruto rewrite last? Actually.
Yes.
Okay. In that case, okay. So obviously, we've discussed this with Attack on Titan. Attack on Titan does this really well, basically up until season 4 with Marley. That's when they do this issue. Oh yeah, I remember. There's more examples in Boruto. Everyone except for Sarans and Ray hate Boruto now. Like it's so and so. It's always like all but 1. So Death Note does this right from many angles. Just
Where is
the
this,
entire
by the way?
story. They're always doing it right.
Where is this, by the way?
The first one, the one Oodie was about to say. Okay, so the spoilers for Death Note. Light is Kira, and Kira kills criminals. And all right, already at the end of episode 1, we've already got the blind sheep problem eliminated. How do we know? Because there's a clear divide. Basically, half the world is pro Kira. Yes. They love it. The other half the world is, we got to stop Kira. It's not just the people in the crowd looking at the television the first day. It's throughout the whole story.
Which is awesome.
They go back and forth. There'll be news reporters saying, we got to stop Kira. You'll have other news reporters saying, no, Kira's right. Light, of course, will take advantage. Like, for example, Kiyomi Takada, the girl Light dates for a little bit, becomes one of these reporters who promotes Kira. They do this back and forth a lot. Within the task force, the main antagonistic group of the story, the people trying to stop Light slash Kira, you have Matsuda, who's the kind of silliest guy among the group. Right from episode 1, he is the guy who presents, hey, he presents it to the whole police force. Ever since Kira started doing this, crime rate has gone down. So Ichigo Yagami, Light's dad, is like, hey, I hope you're not saying, let Kira do this, but you are correct. The crime rate has gone down. You made a point. And then later on, this when Light's doing his thing where he pretends like, oh, I think I might be Kira. I've been thinking about how I would like to kill crime, blah, blah, blah. Matsuda again says, hey, Light, I've thought that too. Doesn't mean I'll go kill people, but like, I've had those feelings. And Matsuda does this throughout the whole story. Like, he acknowledges Kira has a point. And this is from the main antagonistic group. And even L sometimes will be like objective, be like, there might be a point to what he's doing, but at the end of the day, he is a murderer. We got to stop him. And the point is, it's not just this ridiculous, unfathomably, stupidly weird, over-the-top thing where just everyone's a blind sheep. Like, people have varied perspectives, and it makes sense. There is a divide. And in many cases, this works in Death Note's favor because using Matsuda or the Kira supporters as an example, it adds a layer of the question, was Light right? Nobody's gonna ask it if the whole story just Light's all by himself, every single person's against him. It's gonna decrease that question. It's not gonna make you think about the story's themes very much. Whereas if you have these divides, it actually makes you ask the question. Now, of course, if you look at like Pain's speech to Naruto, Pain's speech was so fucking good that people are still asking the question, even though the whole village was against him. But that's because of how good Pain's speech was. It was just that convincing. Like, you have to go harder. I think the division stuff helps. Now, I mentioned, actually, do you want to go first with Death Note before I continue to Hunter x Hunter?
I have a couple of things I wanted to add here. Is that the first thing is that the whole ideology in and of itself is the compelling concept in Death Note. If someone had the ability to just kill anyone, let's just say Akira existed in real life, that would create a moral divide. That is the compelling issue. I wish, if anything, we saw more of the real world reacting to Kira, especially as Kira first broke out. We didn't see too much of it. We saw enough that it was good. It could have been elevated to just small scenes level.
Of people muttering and talking.
Yeah, I wish we got that.
I think there's a few more in the manga, but not crazy more.
Yeah. So that's one thing. Again, that's a compelling, interesting thing to where it would divide people. I do want to see both sides of that. And on that note, I want to see both sides of that taken to the extreme, and I want that to be the main characters. So I do, who's the best main character for Death Note to be? It's going to be the person who unequivocally believes they are 100% in the right to the absolute most extreme. Who is that in the story? That is Light Yagami. That's why we're following him. That's why the author gave him the Death Note, as opposed to any other random person who could have got it. Similarly, on the flip side, who do we have opposing him? Those who think he's unequivocally, no matter what, in the wrong. Sure, you have Matsuda who's like, oh, well, maybe he has a point, but again, L, yeah, he might have a point, but he is just a murderer. He's not going to hesitate on that. He's going to his dying breath, be trying to capture Kira regardless of everything. So that's why they're the antagonists. Then you have everyone in between, the middle ground, who is back and forth. Maybe they don't have an opinion or their opinion isn't as strong. That's fine. They're not as in the story as they shouldn't be. You look at Attack on Titan, this is similar to Trust. You immediately weed out those who don't want to be there. So it's not like you have a ragtag group of 6 individuals who just all 100% of them agree. No, you have a force of 100 people in Trust, and 90% of them just retreat. They just walk away. And then going into it, you've already weeded out those who don't want to be there. So going into it, you have those who unequivocally do. They do want to be there, but even on top of that, you have a second layer of that, a nuance to where how far are those people who do think this way and do want to be there despite knowing the consequences and the grave matter situation, how far can they be pushed? What level is their loyalty? And each of them do have different levels to where some want to retreat earlier than others. Mikasa wants to stay there the whole time, but like Rico is like, no, bro, this mission's a failure. Yeah, I'm glad we came here because it's what we agreed to do, but no, we gotta escape. And again, that's creating conflict within the group. They do that again in Death Note.
Yeah, I got more examples of this far. I have more Death Note examples. Okay,
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah, so I don't remember his name. It's not Matsuda. It's the one cop who has the family who about halfway through, it's a little bit more than halfway through the story, he quits.
Aizawa.
Aizawa quits the task force. I'll let you mention him. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I had more things. So, well, just keeping with Aizawa for a minute. Yeah, so Aizawa left the task. So there's actually another guy. I don't remember his name. He left very early on and he rejoins at the very end. He left because even though they want to stop Kira, they're worried about their lives. And Aizawa eventually comes to this similar thing. He stays there for pretty much the whole time, but eventually it's like, we've been on this Kira case. We have been at death's door for God knows how long. I'm away from my family. I want to be with my family now instead of dying, basically. And that's within the task force. You've now added. It's not all the task force are blind sheep willing to throw away their lives. Some of them, like Aizawa and the other guy, chose to leave in order to save their lives. Of course, Matsuda and especially Lightstad are going to stick there till the end. They will not leave. But you have some who are willing to leave. And again, this is a task force of 5 people at this point. And so if you have 1 to 2, that's actually, you're looking at 20 to 40% of your crew leaving. So you got to look at the numbers. Just because a Death Note and Attack on Titan don't always have a 50-50 split, but a 30-70 split is eliminating the blind sheep problem. The problem is when it's 100 to 1. That's when it's like, all right, blind sheep problem.
And especially just for the sake of the plot, I want to add that Attack on Titan doesn't just do this in season 1. Even in the final season, they do have at least the first layer of this to where they are weeding out those who don't want to be there. Yeah, you have all of Paradis agreeing with Eren, except for the 5 main characters. And of course, it's going to be the main characters. That is plot contrivance. That is just a writing problem in general. Why are they the ones agreeing? Not necessarily because it works for their characters in particular, but because they're the main characters. They're the named ones with the character development that we have to have, so we're going to follow them. Yeah. Similarly, they have that problem.
Even then, though, I will say,
yeah,
this is where you're getting to the extremes, of course. This is when Attack on Titan's at its worst. You have the 7 people on Paradis, or however many it is. It's probably 10 at that point because you've got Hanji, Levi, and the 7 rookies that are still left or whatever. So you have them out of the whole crew. Okay, I know it's only 7, but hey, that's more than 2. And then on Marley's end, yeah, all you really have are Commander McGaff, Gabby, Falco, and the 4 warriors left. I know that's only 6 or whatever, but that is still better than 2. This,
But I will.
That's at its absolute worst. That's a problem there.
I will add. This is what I'm going to fix in my Attack on Titan episode. As I'm going to add back in that nested layer. See how far they're going to be pushed to see where their loyalties truly lie. Each of them have different levels, and I think that should be taken organically, naturally, based on who the character is, just like Aizawa from Death Note. Because I do feel like, to an extent, they were just all on board, they just talked it out, and all right, let's go get them. Just yeah, they didn't want to do it because Eren's their friend, but it's not about whether or not Eren's doing the right thing, or the politics, Marley, parody, war, future conflict with the world. It's none of that. It's not about the ethics or the moral conundrum. It's not about the compelling question. It's just about, their personal feelings for Eren at that point. Which again, I'm adding back in. You could say there's a little bit of it in the finale, but I don't think it's really much there at all. But it's either way,
personal feelings.
If it's there, then it's not there enough to where I think it needs to be there more, at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Real quick for more examples, though.
Yeah.
In Death Note again, L, who is basically, I'm it's Kira, and even obvious, especially after L
You're
dies
cutting out a
again.
little bit, Kamui,
Even then,
again.
you've got like, oh my god, I'll lose my fucking mind.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna run downstairs, say this, and then you talk for a minute so I can wait.
Yeah, that's fine. I got plenty to talk about.
So like when there's many times where like obviously L and Nier are just like Kira's light the whole time, basically.
Mhm.
They're the one exceptions there. You've got people like Light's dad. He's unwilling to accept Light as Kira the entire time up until his death. Granted, obviously Light's being smart to avoid things, but like he's like the opposite. Just Light is not Kira. Matsuda is basically like that as well. Up until the very end, he doesn't believe Kira would be Light, even when it's like pretty much obvious at that point. People like Aizawa and the other dude whose name I forgot, they're in that middle ground to where like there's been multiple times where they're like, okay, he might be Kira. Oh, maybe he's not. They go back and forth. So you're getting the whole spectrum. Similarly, when it comes to like Annie reveal, Reiner Bertolt reveal, you've got varied perspectives. You've got some people like Aaron who's just unwilling to believe it. You have people like Armin who are like, oh no, dude, I think it is because of XYZ, all these being L, like XYZ. This is why they're the traitors. You've got other people who are like, this, I don't want to believe it, but like it might be true. Like you get the whole spectrum, basically. And like they do that, like I said, it's really season 4 is when you start to run into these problems. Even like again, you can just go into random ass stuff when it comes to the warriors' mindsets themselves. But you've got Annie, who's pretty just, she's kind of just doing it. Like in season 1, there, like she's being more cold. Reina is very much struggling with his warrior versus soldier thing he's got going on. Eventually, he's the one who becomes resolved next. Bertolt's the last one to become resolved, and get it's staggered. It's never all at the same time. Which, again, if it was Blind Sheep, they would just all be the same way the entire time. The Blind Sheep problem reduces variability with the characters for one thing. It just decreases the dynamic.
Yeah.
I feel like there's still endless more examples.
There's endless more things to say. I do want to make a very, very, very quick funny detour, just because you were just talking about it. This is unrelated to what we're talking about. I just want to say because it's funny. So I was going back to rewatch the scene where Armin tells Mikasa that Eren died in trust. And she does her like whole like speech there, if you remember. Part of that speech,
Yeah.
especially towards the end, is her emphasizing, I am a warrior. And she's saying that right in front of Ryan. I thought it was hilarious.
I said that too. I was like, do you think that got like
Yeah.
Ryan
Yeah.
up parked up from that?
It's so funny, though.
I have a warrior. Funny if Ryan was like, I am a soldier.
Oh my god. Okay.
Moving
Back
on to
to the
Hunter x
point.
Hunter now.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm gonna let you talk for a minute in case I cut out.
Okay.
You had something in mind. I had something else in mind. What did you have in mind for Hunter x Hunter?
Well, before Hunter x Hunter, I did want to continue more on Attack on Titan Death Note a little bit. I feel like we could more so come back to Hunter x Hunter a little bit. If that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. Okay. So, first of all, I want to speak on Aizawa. So, the plot, the A story, didn't demand at any point in time for Aizawa to do this, and especially for when he does do it. It's just a natural conclusion or consequence of the world itself and for that character. It's, again, not because Aizawa in particular needed to do it for any story beat, and not because that story beat needed to exist, but because it's giving the character respect and giving the story a chance to breathe as well.
It's giving him character.
Yeah, he didn't need to do that. The A story loses nothing by removing that, but I'm so glad they include it.
And not like, and obviously it does do more than just whatever nonsense. Why not? It also, like, having Aizawa leave means less people on the task force, which in one hand it makes it like more tense because it's like, oh, the task force has gone even smaller, and it's like Light getting an extra push ahead, basically. Even though Light's our protagonist and we're technically rooting for him, but it's also like Light, by this point the story's getting more and more like bad. So you're also kind of like, oh, I don't know, man. Like it adds a good, I don't know how to describe it, but like, but conflicted.
Yeah. Well, again, the thing with Aizawa, that is the nested layer here, because the first layer, again, coming right from the very beginning, it isn't just a ragtag group of like 6 police force members in the city. No, it was like 200 people on this whole task force division, and they were told, if you don't want to be in the Kira case, you can leave. This was like before we got to see L. I think this is the reason why it was these 6, because only those who were going to be on the case.
Like L only revealed after was only those 6.
Exactly, yeah, because he didn't trust those who weren't loyal or dedicated enough. So already we're removing those who aren't going to play a factor. That's completely fine. That's, first of all, that's just fixing the blind sheep problem. How I think this problem develops in stories in the first place, speaking from the author's mindset, the writer's perspective, is first. So I'm not going to call this lazy. It can come across as lazy. I feel like it's almost irresponsible to call it lazy because they are on deadlines, etc., etc. So especially if this is a problem later on, they should put their story first. That is their priority, to where problems like this can just naturally occur through the limitations of the world. That's fine. Where I think this comes from is when you start treating the world itself, or classes, or societies, or concepts as characters themselves, individual, like singularity. Like, I think Kishimoto later on in the story was treating the Uchiha clan as a character, as opposed to the characters consisting of the Uchiha clan, which is how we get to the blind sheep problem.
Especially like the 2 best examples, the best example is the coup d'etat. You've got obviously Itachi and Sasuke, obviously are the characters. Fugaku and Mikoto a little bit, because they're a little bit less. This is more in the novels anyway.
Yeah.
And like in the novels, they're kind of more like mixed about it. But the rest of the clan is just one character. It's just a freaking dude with the white hair yelling at Itachi. That just is the clan's character.
Every Uchiha is written that way because they're an Uchiha clan member, which at that point, they aren't a character. They are the embodiment of the Uchiha clan. They are one unified force, which is backwards thinking of how stories should be handled if you're going to treat them delicately with the mature and respect that they deserve, the care that they need to be tended to. So again, in Death Note, it's not treating the world as a character. It gives the world character by treating the world as individuals making up that character. And similar for the task force. It's not that the task force is a character, it's individuals working together to, and this is what it should be doing for every division. It should be trying to simulate a unified force. It's the concept of a task force that doesn't actually exist. It only exists in concept. What Naruto and Sasuke do to work together as one shinobi, that's like the number one epitome of what they should be striving for, but that should never be realistic or be what we're going for in the story in the first place. It should be trying to get as close to that as you can, because it's made of individuals who should be trying their best to work together to overcome their individual differences that make them individuals.
And for a couple more things, I'll come back to that one after. So one of the issues I think is when you have 50,000 characters and you're like, well, I can't give them all character. So hypothetically with the Uchiha clan, let's just say it's already established 100 of them. Kishimoto's obviously not just gonna go hard on individual perspectives from all 100 of them or whatever. This is where stuff like what they did with the task force comes in handy. You eliminate the blind sheep problem by basically weeding out the people.
Yes.
So then you can dwindle the numbers down to 5, so you can have those 5 characters. But you've already eliminated the blind sheep problem with your initial just weeding it out the people thing. Now, in the course of the case of the coup d'etat, I don't think that's quite as applicable. Granted, I have something similar to it in mind. But the other thing I was going to say, the other reason why I think this problem tends to arise, not always in the same situation, it's when I'm gonna use Naruto as an example. It's when you want it to feel like the character was able to overcome something just that much more impactful. So if only half the village hates Naruto while the other half loves him, that's not gonna feel like as much of an accomplishment as literally the
Yeah,
entire village hates Naruto.
exactly.
And that is something, of course, in Naruto's case, the Naruto story, that's a frequent one. You why Kishimoto made Itachi and Chizui the only ones against the clan to make it so that they are the only ones against the clan, and so on and so on. Madara is the only one. All the clan, no one in the clan listens to him. So I understand why he's doing some of the things he does there. In some of the cases, I think it works. In other cases, it's like you could kind of lessen the blind sheen. Even when it comes to like Naruto and the village stuff, I mean, technically speaking, there is Iruka and the ramen guy. You know, if you just have a few people, like for example, like in flashbacks, there's like Shikamaru is actually pretty nice to Naruto. He's like asking his dad, like, "Oh, why does everyone hate him anyway?" Shikaku is just like, you're allowed to form your own opinions, blah blah blah. In that case, I think it's totally fine if you have people like, let's just say there's 10 Shikamarus where they're not over there hanging out with Naruto, being his best friend, making him not lonely, but they're not being mean. Like they're nice to him. They just don't really talk to him much. Having a lot more of those types of people, let's just say 30% of the village is like that. And we know that. Naruto has every reason to still feel lonely because he's still not like with them. And from his perspective, he could think they hate him, but we know that they don't. And now you've made the village less of a blind sheep. Now, this is probably the one of all the ones I would care the least about changing because having the whole village hate him, it works. It's fine.
Yeah.
But like, just as an example, there, I don't know what you think there.
I completely agree. Now, again, it's less of a blind sheep problem and more of a blind sheep dilemma or blind sheep conundrum. Almost again a compelling question, as if this was a story of which side do you fall under. There is nuance and complexity here for both sides, which means you could lean on either side based on your opinion, your own individualistic
like, for
experiences.
example, in filler arcs, they have Iruka be like in that teeter-totter position, which is actually really good. And that's all the more reason to have the other perspective shown. You have the pretty much just neutral people like Kid Shikamaru and Shikaku, for example. You have the people like the freaking dude throwing the mask at Naruto's face, the haters. And then you have like eventually Iruka's like the nice ones. But then that way, when you have a flashback Iruka who's teeter-tottering, I feel like that feels more natural than if everyone in the village hates him and then Iruka is just teeter-tottering. Like, I don't know what you think about that, but like I said, it's not a problem. It's just it's a question.
Well, this is what I was getting at.
Moving on.
When before moving on to Hunter x Hunter, this is what I was getting at when I got two more things at the very least. What I was getting at when I was saying that it's characters getting something because the plot demands it, not because it's their characters. They're giving these things to the main characters because they're the ones we see, but it's not about that, and that's why we see them. That's why it's them, rather than because it's their character, because it's them in the story. On the opposite end of that, I think the problem here isn't with the named characters nearly as much as it is with the nameless character. So
it's usually the nameless.
Exactly. That's really the problem here, because it's the ones you don't see rather than the ones you do. How I would word this is that less is more, but that's not to say simple is better. How I would say it is, it's the blank space that matters. It's what is in the background, what you don't see, what isn't written that matters. The uncanny valley. Again, less is more. And so if you have the implication of something, that in and of itself is giving character development to characters you aren't writing. We don't know the names of the individuals in Death Note who were for or against Kira, the random ones in society. We just know that half of society was for Kira, half of it was against Kira, or so along the lines of half to half. And it's not like either vehemently for or vehemently against. It's all over the place on the spectrum, because that is how humans are. That's giving respect to the individualistic complexities of human individualistic experiences. And if you do that in Naruto or other series at other points in time, that's how you fix the blind sheep problem. It's not necessarily about the main characters, it's about the side characters. One more thing I want to add as a separate thing to add on to all of this is that this is how you get to the theme in the first place, by focusing on these named characters who should embody these more extreme roles as opposed to the less extreme roles, which is why the less extreme roles aren't in the story. Because you want the theme to be as clear as it can be by the characters driving both opposite ends of the theme. So whether Kira is definitively right or definitively not right, regardless of what the answer is, whether it is one or the other or it is somewhere in between, you want to see the characters to see where they are right or wrong, considering they're the ones embodying that theme. Again, the theme is the answer to a question presented. And the question presented isn't typically a yes or no or something necessarily easy to follow. The theme, the answer, is the author's message of what he thinks is the right answer. In this case, the compelling question of Death Note is Kira right? Again, there is complexities on both sides, because just look at real life politics for a moment. Shout out politics in real life. You have that healthcare... Shout out. Shout out. You have that healthcare CEO drama that recently started like a week ago. I don't know if you've looked at this at all. I just see this a lot. I looked into it like... Yeah, I don't blame you. Some dude... I gotta be careful with like monetization here because this is real life events, but like some dude took an arm of fire and used one on a CEO of healthcare, just like in broad daylight, and like a lot of people are for that because like they don't condone it, but they understand it because, oh, he's one of those greedy healthcare people. Well, he's killing people anyways. Why? You think I'm gonna care if he dies? Do I have remorse for that guy that's basically killing other? It's like that idea. It's like a Robin Hood kind of situation. But the point is he still killed someone. But anyways, I think if anything, the theme of Death Note would embody that idea of it doesn't matter whether or not Light is right or wrong, because in both ways he is both right or wrong. What matters is that he is just a killer. Which is, I think, how you get to the answer. It's not about being right or wrong. It's whether about Light is human or God. Which is, I think, from the very beginning, how you get to the end result of that theme, or how you could like predict what the answer is going to be from the very beginning, as I think it should be there. The character should give an answer from the very beginning. And then it's based on the answer of how that eventually comes to play out or unfold. The conclusion of that answer, which is how you know which answer is right from the beginning. The consistency there of it. Light couldn't consistently be a god. In the end, he faltered to where he was a human at some point in time, which is why he was quote-unquote wrong, why he lost. Kira's wrong because murder is wrong. Regardless of if the compelling question of whether or not Kira's doing the right thing or not, yeah, you could argue whether or not in real life the guy that did the CEO killing was right or wrong. It doesn't matter whether he's right or wrong. He can be right if you want to go that far. Let's just say that guy is right. He should still be punished for murder, is what the theme of Death Note would be, at least.
Exactly, and that's L and Nier's point. Like, exactly. It doesn't really matter because you are still just a murderer.
Yeah. I think that's everything I want to say. If you wanted to move to Hunter x Hunter.
Yeah. So, I thought you said you had something in mind, and I don't remember if you did or not.
I probably did. I don't remember exactly specifically what I was referring to because I don't remember when you asked. I remember you asking, but I don't remember exactly the details. If you want to go first, that might spark my memory, or I might disagree with what yours was in the first place.
Okay. Well, I'll start with the most similar examples to the ones we've already discussed. So,
Mhm.
in the Phantom Troop arc, you see this pretty clear as day. So, obviously, the Phantom Troop, like the original Akatsuki or the Akatsuki 2.0, I don't care which side of the spectrum you're on.
Yeah.
Basically, the Akatsuki, right? So, they have a thing like if you have a disagreement, you do a coin toss, all this shit.
Yep.
The point, though, is in the Phantom Troop arc, you got these like-minded individuals. So they are all like, most of them come from the same Meteor City. Literally over half the group is just the OGs. They grew up together. Okay, these are like-minded individuals, and yet you find them at a standstill a couple of times where half of them are on one side, half of them are on the other. So half of them are like, when you get to the end of the arc, half of them are like, guys, we got to go kill Karapika. It doesn't matter whatever he said about saving Crollo. We can move on. Crollo said this, so Crollo said that. We can move on without the head of the spider. The other half is like, no, Crollo is my best. They're basically underlying thinking, Crollo is my best friend. I'm not leaving him behind. So they have like this conflicted view on what they should do. Obviously, they end up Pakunoda ends up winning the argument where she gets to go back and let Crollo free and all that. But again, you have like the crew of like-minded individuals, yet you still have a 50-50 split. Just an easy example. The other thing I was going to say, the main one, is Hunter x Hunter is interesting. It doesn't really do too much of this like all versus one thing in general. For the most part, every character is just presenting something unique. It's very interesting. Like there aren't blind sheep at all because everyone is a sheep with vision. There are no sheep. They're all pet cats. I don't know. Like the point is like everyone just is a unique character, really, for the most part. Like there just aren't really these crowds of people. Like they just don't do that. And in a lot of cases, now for smaller scale stuff, look at the Chimera Ant arc. I mean, literally every single important ant, the ones that speak English and stuff, is presenting something different to this identity and humanity related question.
Thank you.
And that's the main one I was going to get at. Is like, so looking at the Royal Guard,
unlike the Shinju, by the way.
Four. Exactly. This is the video I'll eventually do one day.
Yep.
To where they each have a different answer as it pertains to their identity, humanity, and the specific one I was going to mention is the answer to what the king or what Meruem, who Meruem is. Meruem is, I don't know, who am I? Pitos is basically the human answer of like, or it's like, yeah, like, what should my name be? That was the question. Because Meruem says, I don't know my name. Pito is appealing to Meruem as a human, like, well, just do the name you like. Yuppie is like, that is not my role. I am your royal guard. I cannot speak on your behalf. So he's taking the approach of like honor, like I am a soldier. I don't tell you what to do. You are the king. You decide. And then Shiapoof has the arguably him and Pito have the most important answers. His is you are the king. He's taken that like Chimera Ant idealistically, the idea of the king. The point is all four have a different answer, more or less. And then when it comes to like some of the other guys, like you have Laol slash whatever his original name was, the lion tiger, the lion guy. You've got Chi2, Ikal Go, Palm when she becomes an ant, like all these other people, and they all go through their own little struggles and stuff, and each one is uniquely different. Despite it's a crew of Chimera ants, and yet there's like probably at least 10 that just have their own separate character arc as it pertains to humanity. Oh, there's also Welfin. It's another one who's pretty important towards the end. Like,
yeah, I got a ton to add here that you're gonna love. So first of all, I completely agree. There's obviously no blind sheep problem in Hunter x Hunter, and I'll get to a couple examples of where they do it right. But for the most part, it's not even them doing it right. It's just them not having the situation to do it wrong in the first place, which is that is a testament to good writing in the first place. So let me ask you this. When you think of the Akatsuki, what's the first thing you visualize?
Like the group wearing the robes.
Yes,
like,
yes. Exactly. Okay. So the robes. It's the red cloud, the logo. That's the first thing I think of as well. When you think of the Phantom Troop, what do you think of?
It's just each of them individually. They don't even wear the same
Individuals.
clothes.
Exactly. That is my point. That is exactly my point. The Phantom Troop isn't a troop. It's an individuals, a group of individuals who are individuals and individualistic that call themselves a group, and that works perfectly. Again, you do think of them as individuals because they are individualistic. They each have their own personality, their own name. You know them. And despite their similarities, they do have differences. Like you're saying, they all, or at least half of them, came from Meteor City. Even despite relating to each other, having a similar mindset. I forget the exact thing you said. Similar brain, similar mindset. It was something like that. Despite that, they can still
like-minded people.
Yeah, like-minded people. Exactly. Yeah. Despite being like-minded people, they can still disagree. Why? Because they aren't the exact same, despite being able to relate to each other. Yes, there are similarities, but they're individuals, they're humans. So there are always going to be differences because that's how in depth you can go with humanity, getting down to the very nitty gritty, to where they are going to butt heads to disagree because they're human. You get to Greed Island. I think this is the arc I remember the least, I'll be honest, with the Genthru part in particular. I think Gon's side might have like got together a crew to fight Genthru. And it's like an overall crew to where at the beginning some of them might have walked away. I could be misremembering that, to where it's only those who wanted to fight Genthru stayed on.
Well, there's a few things to happen. Like,
first Genthru goes to like blow up people.
Genthru is forming a crew. A couple people join.
Yeah.
A couple important people don't die. There's the guy with the gorilla nen ability.
Is he the one with the white
if you
eyebrows?
Remember him from the Razor fight. There's the black guy who's the Nen Exorcist, who is the one that they use to get Chrollo as Nen back.
Mm-hmm.
That's in the anime. That's not a spoiler. And outside of that, then there's just Hisoka, Bisky, Gon, and Killua.
Yeah. So by the way, okay. So doing what we just did for the Phantom Troop, apply that to every group in Hunter x Hunter. The Zoldyks.
Well, that's okay. Perfect.
They're
that's
individuals.
A good segue. So, yeah. My next example was going to be the Zoldyck family. So, who is the Zoldyck family? They are a family of assassins. Their whole thing is that they kill people for money. That's the thing. And all of them have opinions on Killua, who leaves the family because he doesn't want to do that. And they're all different. So you've got the mom, who is just like, oh, bring Killua back. Pretty crazy. Maluki doesn't really care. Zeno is the grandfather. Zeno is one of the nicest ones, to where he is very much just like not concerned. Like they don't really focus on him much, but the vibe I get is very much like, let Killua do what he wants. That's the vibe I get from him. Sofa is like, I'm gonna like trick him into coming back, basically. Like, it's just like, we'll let him go so that he can lose his best friend and then come back to me. Like, that's basically Silva. And then the most important one is Illumi, who has by far the most interesting dynamic with Killua. He's the one who tries to actively control Killua, first with his Nen needle, and just mentally all the time, every time he freaking sees him, he's over here trying to like force Killua to do things, like with Aluka. You remember that arc? Like, but the point is, each member of the Zoldyck family has a different approach to Killua. They have their fun little rules, kind of like Chrollo with the coin toss, to where they have their infighting if they disagree on stuff. They're like, yeah, they can disagree and quote unquote fight without fighting each other, which obviously in the election arc that's basically when Illumi's trying to basically just kill Aluka, and he's using his needle. People are doing all this stuff while, and then there's the old lady who turns into a motorcycle. Forgot her name. And her aide. Some of them are trying to help. There's Goto and the black girl who are trying to help Killua protect Aluka. There's the other maids who are like listening to the parents and trying to stop him and blah blah blah. The point is, everyone's doing something different.
Yeah.
Despite being this like-minded family, just like the Phantom Troop. And there's something else I was gonna say on them, and I forgot.
That's okay. There's a ton of groups in Hunter x Hunter. We don't have to go through all of them again. We mentioned Greed Island, Zoldyck, the Phantom Troop. Technically, I wouldn't consider this a group, but if you just wanted to, the Hunter exam participants, if you would have, I wouldn't, but
the Zodiacs would be one.
Yeah, that as well. You also have not just the Royal Guards, because you already mentioned them, but the Chimera Ants themselves, who I wanted to talk on. It's not just that they have different personalities and that they butt heads. They have different goals, ambitions, motivations, everything individual. Like, so much so, I wouldn't even consider them a group. They just all share the same home base, if anything. They just have a like-minded goal of the queen. Is there a ant that doesn't want to support the queen? I forget. Is there one?
Yeah, actually, like there were a few.
Okay,
but,
there you go.
There's let's say Gyro just ditches. It's implied that he becomes an ant at some point, and he just in the manga, at least. I remember I read it. He becomes an ant, and he just leaves to go start his own kingdom, for example, instead of protecting the queen.
Yeah. I don't know if that means he doesn't care about the queen. He might like instinctually care about the queen. Like I think we've seen a couple instances of that. But and I'm not talking about like, oh, I'm corrupt. I'm gonna hunt for the queen and steal 20% of her food and give her 80% of. I'm still gonna count that as quote unquote caring for the queen.
No, he just left.
I'm not talking about Gyro. I'm just talking about in general. But yeah.
Okay. But yeah, either way.
Just to make the distinction.
But honestly, real quick though, it's funny though, because like there's almost too many individual ants with their aspirations and goals that are focused on in that arc.
It makes it long.
It's imagine if the Akatsuki was like 30 instead of 10.
That's freaking good, bro. And again, that gets back to Hunter. It gets back to Attack on Titan Season 1, to where characters like Thomas or Ian, these no-name characters are just gonna die anyways. They have just as much character and focus as the main characters, John, Marco, Connie, and even the main characters can die, despite having just as much relevance as the characters who don't die. Like, again, Ian.
Yeah, like, if you go back to the Trost example,
than Marco.
Like, do you have Rico, Ian, and the other guy, and then Mikasa, all argue, like, they all have a different stance on Eren in some way. Like Ian and Mikasa are both pro Eren, but for different reasons. Rico and the other guy are pretty similar, but like even still, it's just like, and it's focused on like the disagreement on Eren is focused on it. It's not all versus one. It's 50-50.
Yeah. But with Hunter x Hunter, again, the point I was gonna make, especially with the Chimera Ants, isn't just the personalities but head from the very beginning all the way through. It's even at the very end, they all just go off to do their own thing. They're like based on their own individualistic experience. They just do whatever they want to do, which is different from what everyone else wants to do, which is great. Some of them live, some of them die. Again, that's also good. We could even see them later on in the story, maybe. Some of them. Just as individuals, as they always were. They were individuals who were a part of a group. That's similar to Hisoka, who is a Phantom Troop member, but he's not the Phantom Troop. He is Hisoka. Kakuzu isn't Kakuzu. Kakuzu is the Akatsuki.
Yeah, I know the data book gives him his like backstory and all that jazz. Nah, bro. Like, and I hate that. Like, especially like Hidan, as unique and interesting as he is just the Akatsuki when it comes to the actual story that was written. Obviously, Pain, Itachi, Obito, Kisame and Datara I will count, and Sasori you
Datara-
strict to veer away from that.
Datara is
But-
really, really on the line there. I don't think I would count Datara. Sasori,
Datara,
you can
Sasori, and
count.
Kisame are in that middle ground. I think
Yeah.
Kisame is the strongest to veer away.
That's fine.
And this one argues Sasori is. What are the other?
They
Datara is on
got
that
arguments for
borderline of the
different
lower
reasons.
border.
Datara is on the lowest for sure.
Yeah.
Of those
Yeah.
three.
But like, you know, like you fair amount of birds. No, obviously in the Phantom Troop, some people like Kortopi, Benolinov, and stuff probably don't even know who I'm talking about. Yeah, nobody really cares too much about them because not too much was done with them. But even still, you can't really say they're Phantom Troop. They're just it's the guy with the bandages and boxing gloves and the weird looking girl who's short with the weird eyes or whatever. Like, you know, you're not gonna, you know, I mean, it's just like I don't know what to say. It's just they just haven't done that much with them, period. But they're still individually unique.
Yeah. No, I know we're jumping all over the place, but back to Hunter x Hunter. Nameless people. I think there might be an instance in Hunter x Hunter, but I don't quite remember. It'd be the auction. Is it just like random nameless people that we don't know who like are individuals there and like disagreeing or doing their own things and like even being threats to the main character because it's an auction? I forget. Was that a thing?
With the election arc, with that one, it's kind of interesting. So for a general most part, you got the 12 Zodiacs, and they're basically all against Pariston. He's really the standout, right? He's the bad guy of the arc in terms of the election. Obviously, Illumi is in terms of Alka. But even then, Pariston, they don't suffer from the blind sheep problem because Pariston isn't by himself. He's the vice chairman, and he's got a ton of people who work under him who just do what he says regardless. Likewise, there's all the other people who don't like him, like they're working against him. And Pariston is able to convince people very well. He's very like manipulative with his words, whether or not there's Nen involved or not. He just convinces people and stuff. And he sways people. He gets people to vote for him. And it's pissing off the Zodiacs and stuff. Yeah. But like even that arc, the arc that you would think it would suffer the most from, probably, it doesn't really suffer from it because even then you got Jean's another standout where he's not really against Pariston. And then I mean, there's different Zodiacs. They're all unique. And the Zodiacs aren't that interesting, but
yeah.
The point is, I wouldn't say there's a blind sheep problem going on. Similarly, I'm not going to spoil anything. But with the current manga arc, there's the Succession War arc is what it's called. You've got different princes on the, fighting for succession to be the next king. And each one is very different. Everyone's got their following. Everyone's got people who hates them. It's all unique.
Yeah, I wasn't saying it was a problem in case that's what you thought. I was saying what you were saying, that it's not a problem.
I know.
Yeah, because I agree, they're all unique. I will admit that obviously for the story, it makes sense, and it should be this way, that the Zodiacs each get a different level of time to shine, a lot of different focus, some more than others, obviously, but each of them have at least something to make them stand out as an individual character, rather than just a Zodiac.
Yeah.
That being said, I wasn't talking about the election arc, I was talking about the auction.
Oh, I just misheard you, okay.
You're fine.
The auction, so back to Phantom Troop arc, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, so continue with that. What were you saying?
So I could be wrong, I don't quite remember it entirely. I think there were, nameless individuals there who was, just as big of threats to our main characters as anyone else, including the main antagonists. There was just rich people there just bidding, and that was a focus rather than just something in the background. Kurapika's no, I have to make sure I win this.
It was mainly just the one guy who there was other people bidding, but the main focus was the old guy who was trying to buy all the Greed Islands.
Sure. There was also the Scarlet Eyes, if that was
Yeah.
another one. And I think there might be a third one, or it might just be one of those two that Kurapika was like told to buy from her boss, his boss, whatever.
Kurapika had to buy the Scarlet
The
Eyes.
Scarlet Eyes. Okay. Yeah. Wasn't there a certain like threshold limit to not go above? And I think he did go above it, but he won the eyes in the end anyways. I forget.
Yeah. He had to, and then the guy was
Yeah.
like, "It's okay, I'll make Neon happy." Blah blah blah.
Yeah. Anyways, there's not a blind sheet problem there. I was just mentioning it just in case I was forgetting something.
I think we covered Hunter x Hunter pretty good.
Oh, I did want to add more to the
like...
Chimera Antark. But you go ahead first.
Okay.
If you had something to...
Well, I was gonna say, the main thing with Hunter x Hunter that I was gonna say, which you agreed with, is that it's just there's almost no position for it, because even in the Chimera Ants, like where you would think this would be a thing, instead Togashi just wrote like 50,000 individual characters to the point that it's like you can't even really say the Chimera Ants because you gotta point out Chi, Callgo, Leol, and all these other random people. You just gotta name them individually because they're all so unique.
Yeah. I do feel like another thing is just in general, the world itself feels diverse. Like I feel like I wouldn't personally know the difference between the lifestyle of a, let's say, cloud citizen versus a hidden leaf citizen, as opposed to there is a vast cultural and lifestyle difference, obviously, that we can distinctly see between like York New versus Greed Island versus the Dark Continent versus anywhere else that
versus Meteor City.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Because he's building up not just the world on a grand scale, but each individual place as if it's its own world, which is very good. They're adapting to the world around them, and by doing so, they themselves are adapting the world around them to adapt the world better to fit to their lifestyle, which is very good. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So it's both in that regard, which is very cool. But that's a broad topic. On a very specific note, going to Chimera Antark, I have something to say about both the main characters of the Royal Guards and then the King and characters. I'll start with the Royal Guards. Is the fact, like, expanding on what you were saying, is that they can be extremely similar. In fact, they are both literally instinctually royal and guards. Yet, despite that, they have their own individual personalities, designs, and just everything about them is different. And they each have their own beliefs, disagreements, inner thoughts, inner turmoils, things that affect them differently. But at the end of the day, they all have the same goal, which doesn't ever change or waver or hesitate or anything among any of them. All of them, their end ultimate life goal is to protect the king. If we're comparing it to the Shinju, that's good. They each one have their own personality, find their own personality, and they each one do it in the same exact way. Again, that's all fine. What it comes down to is what they think about the goal or how to get that goal. For example, Pito and I was gonna say Nephro Pito. No, that's the same person. Pito and Poof both want the best for the king, but they think what the best for the king is different things. Should Komugi live or die? They both want to protect the king. They're both doing what they think is best to accomplish that same goal that they both agree with, but they both disagree on how to go about it. Even Yuppie's more in the middle, but he's like agreeing with Poof.
Yuppie starts off as, it's actually a third answer of,
yeah,
I don't care if Komugi lives or dies,
yeah,
because it doesn't matter. Basically, like,
yep.
Like, it won't affect the king, basically, is the third answer. Until later on, he starts to veer towards Poof's side.
Which, by the way, I'm glad we have all three, because again, this is going back to like question, answer for the theme. This is a compelling question. What is best for the king? And this gets me onto the king, which I'm going to, again, be very narratively prose, wordy, good quality here. So
It's
yeah,
so easy with the Chimera Ants too,
I
though. Like,
know it's
I
impossible
can't
to
wait to
not
do my
sound
videos
smart.
on this, like just on the Chimera Ants alone, let alone the Shinji, because like I don't know why, but like the Chimera Ant arc of Hunter x Hunter is one of the easiest videos to just say beautifully.
Yeah, it's like
It's
I don't know
because of
how I
the
couldn't.
way they did it. It's just the perfect narrative analysis video
I know,
arc.
yeah, yeah. Okay. With that being said, this is probably just going to be like a shallow, basic analysis, anyways. But again, it's going to sound beautiful at least in the fact that, well, what was best for Meruem? I think it was probably Komugi being alive. Ironically, Netero was blind to uh the king's humanity, whereas the person who was physically blind, ironically, I would imagine, because they were blind as a twist, is why they were able to see Meruem's humanity. I think if Komugi could see from the very beginning, she'd be freaked out just like anyone else. I think that's what they're getting at. If she could see later on, just hypothetically, like in her dying moments, the radiation cured her blindness, she wouldn't probably be freaking out all that much. She'd be like, oh my god, I wasn't expecting that. But like, I don't, at that point, she's already accustomed to the king and knows him based on person. And again, like she's accustomed to being blind. It's not about what she can see. It's about her world, how
Yeah,
she experienced it herself.
because she was
Anyways,
blind, she was able to get to know the king before, like looking. She was able to know him internally before ever worrying about the external. Whereas most people would never get to know the king internally because they would stop at the external because he looks like an ant.
in fact, ironically, I just thought about this as well. The fact that Komugi was born blind. Am I correct on that?
She's blind, yeah.
But she was born blind.
Oh, I think so, but I don't remember. She might have become blind at a very young age.
Hypothetically, if she was born blind, she doesn't know what a human looks like. Meruem would look normal, quote unquote, to her. If anything, if she saw Meruem first, humans would look weird to her.
Mm-hmm.
Or like if she saw Meruem in a
even...
human, she would probably just think everyone has a completely original, unique design. And then when she sees more humans, she's, oh, a human does look generally like this, and the Meruem is the one that looks different. But either way.
Well, then again, she's got all those chimera ants to see, so it might look 50-50. But I actually think she might have been born with vision because I think she just memorized where the board pieces were after losing her vision rather than figuring it out while being blind, but I don't remember for sure.
Okay. Either way, yeah, it's both good and ironic that the person who's physically blind is the one who sees Meruem.
Yeah, for who he is.
Yeah. As opposed to the person who can see, who doesn't see Meruem.
Yeah.
In a way, that's interesting for Blind Sheep dilemma in terms of main characters as opposed to the nameless people.
Yeah. Hunter x Hunter does this so well that the literal blind person still isn't a blind sheep.
I love it. Because again, I feel like another reason from the author's mindset working backwards of the writing why the blind sheep problem dilemma conundrum comes up in the first place is because to an extent, not just for the story, the fact that it just would be better in some instances, like yeah, for the story it is better for the whole village to hate Naruto instead of half the village. Part of it is also to subvert expectations so that we see everyone is like this except for this one person. That makes them special in this regard. But you don't have to do the blind sheep problem for this. You could just do, for example, the rule of 3. We see before Komugi is introduced, we get the expectation for what's happening. The king wants to play the games, and that's the focus. It's on the king wanting to play the games, not the fact that he's playing against the world's masters who are the best, but they're all freaked out and they keep losing and they run away and Meruem kills them. The focus is on the king wanting to play the game, not on them. But by showing them first, once we get to Komugi, we expect that so that once she is learned that she's blind, that's already in and of itself subverting expectations. But then it's her actions, because of her blindness, that reasonably explain that difference. So that's where the subversion of expectation is coming from, as opposed to having to rely on what is essentially the blind sheep conundrum in this case.
In addition, another way around this, coming back to Light as the example, you can still have them stand out by just making that person be the extreme person who stands out. So let's just assume the orders were reversed. There just was, before Kira existed, there just were people voting for the kill the criminals and people against it. Light would still stand out because A, he's insanely smart. B, he's by far the most passionate about this whole thing in the first place. And C, he's the one who's actually going out there and doing it. That alone makes him stand out because none of the others would ever do it. He's the only one who would. So that's another way to approach it without having the blind cheat problem.
Yeah. It's not just about their ideology. It's about who is actually willing to follow through, which again comes down to the loyalty. It's one thing for the Attack on Titan people to say that they'll try that Trost mission with Eren. It's another thing for them to actually be in the situation to where, oh, now we're in the heat of the moment. Now my loyalty isn't as strong as I was saying. Now I want to give up, which shows the inconsistency or hypocrisy between their words and their actions, which gets into the narrative angle sometimes, which fixes the blind cheat problem.
Yeah. Now, moving into back to Naruto. This is just a hypothetical reread example I just thought of like on the fly as I wrote that. So I'm sure you could tweak it. So coming back to the Uchiha massacre, coup d'etat stuff. And like I said, blind sheep. So it's everyone in the clan except for Itachi and Shizui. So I said, instead of just Itachi and Shizui being against the Uchiha coup d'etat, there could have been a small group who opposed it. Let's just say there's 15 members. And Danzo could have killed all of them. Like when he takes Shizui's eye, he gets the strongest root members, and let's just say Shizui is going out to do whatever with the group. And Danzo attacks all of them. He takes Shizui's eye while everyone else gets killed, leaving only Itachi left. Now, his reasoning is basically the same. Danzo wants to eliminate the whole Uchiha clan. He doesn't trust them. He doesn't trust Shizui to not try and control Danzo with Kodomatsu Kami in the future, and so on. So Danzo's reasoning would stay the same. He's killing more people, which makes sense anyway. Now, for Itachi's perspective, though, it would add to his feeling of hopelessness because not only did he just lose his best friend, he lost his entire coup d'etat group. Now, that is technically true anyway, because the group is only 2 people. But in this case, it's like, it would be even more impactful, because imagine if he only lost Shizui then. Oh, he would still have the other group. No, he lost all 14 members. It's more of a drastic shift. Instead of 2-1, it's 15-1. And with the whole group, they would stand an even better chance than they do with just Shizui, right? So they actually stood a chance at stopping this peacefully with the whole group. But with Itachi alone, he has no chance because he's the only person against it. The flaw in Itachi would be ignoring Sasuke. Sasuke would be the one he could have worked with, and it would have worked, but he doesn't see that. He's blind to it. That's fine. That works for Itachi's character arc. But the point is, he thinks he's the only person left. It's a drastic shift, and that would lead him to do what he does, massacre the clan and Danzo's orders. Just thoughts on that. Just literally, you just get like 15 or so people. It's just not just Itachi and Shisui. That's the difference.
Yeah, I like that, especially for the story elements of the Sasuke Itachi stuff you're going with there. I have something to add to that. It's sort of my own idea, but I think we could incorporate the two in a way as well. Is that I was thinking, in fact, I expanded on my idea as you were talking, so I'm just going to say my idea, then the expansion of it, is that rather than just all of them agreeing to do it, they take a vote, and then its majority wins, and then we know which side would win. In this case, the ones who lose just accept the loss and just go along with it. And they can be just like Madara killing Sasuke. It's unfortunate, but looks like I have to, and then they don't hesitate to do it. So they will do it regardless. Because if anything, that's just them valuing their clan over the leaf or respect of the democracy or whatever. I think that's the way to make it work, whether you want to have it be 51% or 99% or anywhere in between. I think realistically, an actual number, not 51 or 99, would be more good, like 55, 60, 80%, whatever you want to say. I think the way I would do it... Oh yeah, go ahead.
I could say one option, or I'll give two options. Is the first would be, let's just say there's 100 people in the clan and there's a group of 15. It could be 85% versus 15, and then the 15% who lost are the group trying to figure out how can we stop this, either before or after the vote.
Yeah,
And the other
yeah, no,
option is
okay,
you
okay.
have like
I'm
it'd be
glad
like
you're saying
70
that.
30, but only 15 are willing to fight against it. That's
I'm
another option.
I'm glad you're saying that because that was the expansion of my idea. So first of all, that was my idea. My expansion of the idea was rather than that being a singular event, this is going to be like a small mini arc to where it's leading up to that grand vote. That grand vote's going to be treated as a spectacle, just as how Boruto's interrogation should have been treated as like a larger than life worldly event in a sense. So you're gonna get like a mini
Or I
arc
have another idea after.
to where it's gonna be like a prediction expectation of how the vote's gonna go. It's gonna be leaning one way, and throughout the course of the arc, it's gonna slowly lean the other way until the vote where it officially finally does in the end lean the other way, subverting expectations. So you could do that either way to where the majority of the clan are gonna vote for no, and then the small uprising somehow convince the Uchiha to mostly vote yes, whether it's a 60% majority or whatever. Or you could have it to where the majority of people vote yes, and people like Itachi and Shisui, or people like them, are trying to convince the clan no, and they do that, but barely not enough to where, like, instead of 90% say killed all, say coup d'etat, it's like 55% say coup d'etat. So in the end, it was like a trifling effort. It was so close, but not close enough. In fact, maybe like Itachi could be the vote that would have mattered. They never told him.
Well, actually, so bouncing off that idea, I had two different versions.
Yeah.
The point's basically the same. So there's just one version will be the majority starts off against it, and then the uprising convinces them for it. The other way is the other way around. So in this case, though, Itachi and his crew could be trying to convince them don't do the coup d'etat pretty openly, like they're advocating for that. But when Danzo kills Shizui and the others, that actually tips the scales, and Itachi knows it. Going into that final vote, he doesn't even vote. He doesn't even show up that day. On the final day of the vote, it can be like the night before the massacre. It's just like, all right, we're making our final vote. This is whether or not we do it. Fugaku can be pissed Itachi's not there. Itachi already knows with the people dead, they're going to go for the coup d'etat, and he's going to have to do the massacre.
Okay. With this being said, there's two different routes you could go with. You could go with the sort of sinking filling. So, like, the votes taking place in the scene directly following the tragedy of seeing Shisui's death and Itachi not there. So it's like a pit in your gut that you just hate to watch it. The fact that Itachi didn't even show up, you just know it. Like, oh, that's just awful. It's so sad to watch in that case. Or you could again go with the larger than life event to where it's like they're slowly cutting back and forth between two different scenes of the votes slowly going in as you're kind of like Itachi doing his own thing. And this is actually the night of the Uchiha massacre. So either Itachi kills them before the final vote goes through, or like Itachi is like sitting there in his Anbu mask waiting for the vote to go through. Then like Fugaku's like, it's decided. We will do the coup d'etat. And that's when the massacre officially begins.
Either one could work. I think I would prefer the first option though, the tragic one. I think is what I would go for. Just given the nature of Itachi's story in this arc. I think that would just fit a little bit better.
Okay. Yeah. Either way, in one instance, it's either going to be intertwining the Uchiha massacre with the vote as one singular story. In another one, the vote is one event leading up to the Uchiha clan massacre, but they're two different narratives with essentially two different arcs.
Yeah.
And I want to add for like this probably be like a 2 or 3 episode like mini arc. Couple chapters, maybe like 5, 4, 3 chapters in the manga. You want to do that?
Why not, bro? Like, considering the whole Obito flashback for Sasuke is already like 8 chapters long, just make it 11. It's fine.
Exactly.
It's interesting flashback.
And the arc is about the vote, it's always in the back of your mind and broadly in the story, even mentioned every so often. But the focus isn't on the vote. It's what you can do compared to what you do, because it's the votes is the point of the story, but it's about the events that you're seeing. For example, killing Shisui or Itachi talking to people, and that
I feel like it would be a lot like the election arc in Hunter x Hunter. So like the
yeah,
vote is like
yeah,
who's gonna win the election. So is the coup d'état going to happen or not? But and that's like the plot event that you need to focus on to know what will happen. Obviously, we already know it's a flashback, but ignoring that. But the important stuff is, well, what are the Uchiha uprisers doing? What is Shizui and Itachi and everyone doing? And then most importantly, when Shizui and the others on Itachi's side are dead because
yeah.
of Danzo.
So
That's the key turning point.
Another thing I'm getting at here is it's not about seeing Itachi and Shisui trying to convince others, or whoever trying to convince others, or whatever there. Because that's almost expected at that point if we're doing this anyways. That's like the story beat. It's not about that, even though that's the point. It's about seeing what you do with that. So it's about the conversation itself, the exchange of the dialogue, rather than just the fact that we know it happened. Because that's what's progressing the macro versus micro story. The micro story is the one that we're following, even though the macro story is the one that's being followed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think a good comparison would be it would be like Attack on Titan, the episode we just watched where Eren is in court. And it's the difference between the guys reading off Eren's sins and the specific sins they're reading off and how they're reading it off in the certain context, the way they're reading it off, and then whatever Eren's reaction to this would have been. Like, I think, like, make an analogy there, it would be really interesting if, like, say, at the vote, or, like, a meeting leading up to the vote, they're talking about the pros and cons of the massacre, if we got more there. That would be interesting.
Well, I think that would be more like an Itachi. But do you mean like the coup d'etat, not the massacre?
Yeah, so it's the clan presenting why they should or shouldn't do it, because again, it's about a compelling question. It's like Kira. We know there are people there supporting and against Kira. I don't care if there's people there supporting against Kira. I care about why. You can understand why based on relatability reasons, but I want to hear them say it in the story. I think that'd be interesting as well.
Yeah, I agree.